Hello everyone, this is Rich, and in the last video we created our show route and then linked over to that show route. So now what we're actually going to do is create our first set of routes to actually add new posts, and these are commonly done in two routes. You've got the new route that goes to the form itself, so it just gets a new form, and then you actually have the creation action itself of once the user submits the form. So let's walk through that. So in our view, we actually want to add a way to add a new post. So we're going to create a link, and we'll say add post, and then that needs to go to a route, which we don't have yet. So let's go ahead and make that route. And so in this situation, the route will be a new form. So we will create a get/post/new, and then we want to go to posts and the new action, and then we'll just use a common convention here for Rails, and we're going to call the helper new post. So that should be fine, and then we'll go ahead and let's just check our routes and see how that came out. And you can see we've got our new post prefix, and that goes to /post/new. And so let's then we need to place that into our view, finish out our link here. So let's create, so we'll put in new post path and refresh. We've got our add post right here, and you can see it's going to /post/new, so we'll click that. And so we have like an interesting error here. This isn't a routing error. This is actually saying record not found, ID equals new. What's going on? So the issue is that this is an important piece of the ordering in your route. So what's actually occurring here is that notice that our route list is first it's going to this get, and then it's going to this. And the problem is that this is looking for /posts/ and then it's going to take anything after the slash and turn it into this dynamic variable. So notice that because we sent in /new, it's actually just assigning that to the ID parameter of new, and it's never reaching this route. So we actually have to have this route happen before the former route we created. So that's simple to do. We just reorder it right here. It would reorder it in our rake routes, and then when we actually refresh this page now, we are getting the more expected. The routing error is gone, where it's looking on post control and it cannot find the new action. So let's go ahead and do as we have done before, create our new action. We won't send anything into that. Let's refresh, and of course we get the missing template. So let's go ahead and make that template. And there we go, we've got our template. So we have our new post template, and now what we want to do is actually add the form. So let's go ahead and actually start that. And so I just want to paint out what we need to create here. We need to create a form tag with the action of /posts and the method of post, because for the first time we're not doing a get, we're actually sending data, and then we would close the form. And so to do that in Rails, we're actually going to use the form tag helper. Now we would usually use form, and we will after this, but I want to just show this in a more generic sense. So form tag, and then we want to send in our action route. So we don't do that in Rails. Remember, we always want to send in our named helper. So we haven't actually got that yet. We're going to need to create that. And so let's go ahead and create our post route, our first post route. Same path. Remember, you can have a different pairing. So we've got a get and a post going to the same path, and the post controller, and we go to a create action. And since we've already created this, we know we want to go to create action. Let's circumvent the errors that we've been following in the past, and we'll just go ahead and create that create action. And then we'll complete our form here, and we will send in the posts path right here. And let's just see what that's generated. So I just hit refresh, and nothing's actually been sent out to the thing, but let's view the source and see what HTML it created. So it did create the form, it did create action /posts, and with method of post, and then it actually added in a few other things that are these awesome built-in Rails sort of security measures to protect against things like cross-site attacks and that sort of thing. So this is the right form that we wanted it to create. So let's add in to inside that form tag. If you send in a block here, you can now add in your various inputs. So we're not even going to send an input. We're just going to create a submit button. So we use the submit tag and call it submit. And let's look here then. So when we refresh, we have our submit button. We're going to click it. And what actually happened is it's a very familiar error. We've got our template, and it's trying to find the create template. Now, it's very rare that you would create this sort of thing because really we want to receive data from the form, we want to do something with it, and then we want to actually send the user back to one of our other already made templates that do the job. But notice that Rails doesn't care at all about this. Rails is simply looking at the facts of you've made a route, you've made a create action, so I need to now render to a create HTML form. So in fact, if we went into our post controller here and overrode what is happening, remember this is happening by default, post render, post create, we're actually going to just render out text and we'll say form submitted. And then, so if I refresh and I back up here and then I hit submit, we see the text rendered out, form submitted. So Rails does not care. It is just following the controller action pattern, and then always, remember, always render a view. So from here, let's go ahead and actually do something useful with this create action on the form. So if we go back into our new form, what we're actually going to do here is instead, we're going to follow more of the Rails conventions here. So instead of actually using form tag and passing in the name route, the common thing is you actually do the, you actually place the post new build. So that, you know, when you do a new, you're trying to build a new record in the database, we're going to throw that into our instance variable of post. And then we're going to send that through with a form4 tag instead. So form4 and then post. So this is actually just exactly the same as form4 post.new. But there are reasons that we want to do it like this, which will become apparent later. So form4 post, and then we actually send in a block, and this time we send it in with a variable for what are called our form builders, and then we end that block. And so like we'll just see what that does right here. And so it's all working, and actually if we look at the source again, this time we see a slightly more complex form method has been created because it knows to be looking for a specific post resource. And so now we can start sending in our standard thing. So let's go ahead and we're just going to send in a label for our title, and then we'll send in a text field for the title. And you know, you typically want to put those in divs, and you'd have all sorts of styling here, but you know, that's beyond the scope of this video. So we'll just do it. It'll look very ugly. So f.label content. Yeah, that's the name of the body of our blog. And then also we're going to do a text area because that will have a large amount of content to put in. We'll close our div tag there. And then of course we want also a submit button. So we can do, and this time we, instead of doing submit tag, we build it off of our form builder. The reason we send in all these form builders is because it allows it to associate it specifically to the post model. So form submit, and we can call it whatever we want. So we'll just say add and close that div out. And let's see how that looks. So we have a really, really super ugly form there. And so that is good. So if we go ahead and hit add, we see it's still, right, so it's trying to get back to that create template, and that's not what we want to do. But one of the useful things is that we hit this add, and we should be able to see, if you scroll all the way down, you actually can see the parameters that were sent through with the form. So the key part that we're really interested in is we don't care about this, but we have a post key on our parameters here, and then that's actually a new hash, and it's got the title parameter and it's got the content key. So the title and content key are inside our post hash. So we see the data coming through. That's great. So we want to actually use that data. And so to do that, we're going to collect those parameters. Just like we collect the parameters right here in our show, we want to collect those in our create as well. So to get a hold of those, we know that it's in our parameters, and we know it's sitting in our post key on the parameters there. And so what we could do is we could grab post, and then we could also grab something like title, and then we know we've got the title. But we don't want to do that for every type of parameter, and there's also a security issue here in that we only want to make sure we're grabbing everything out of the post key. Rails has a concept called strong params. So what we want to do is we're going to create a private method. Just means it's a method that is only ever called by other methods within inside this class, and we're going to call it post params. And then what that's going to do is actually it's going to fetch from the params. We use this require method to pull the post, and then we're only going to permit certain keys coming from that, and that's going to be the title and the content. This is a really, really good practice to follow, because if you have someone like a malicious actor trying to send data into your database that is not permitted from the form, there are ways to potentially do that. And what this does is it specifically says, I don't want to touch, my database is never going to see anything that hasn't gone through this very specific, coming in through our post object and being permitted only these two fields to come in. So if they try to send anything else, it doesn't matter. The controller will receive it, but it won't do anything with it. So now the create action has access to these parameters just by saying post params. So that's good. So why don't we go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to create our post, and in this case we're not actually ever going to render this to view, so this can be a local variable. So we're going to create our post, and we're going to do post new, and we're sending in those post params. So this would be absolutely no different than like when I was in my console and I typed post new title, whatever the title is, and then content, and whatever the content is. And so that creates the that doesn't create it in the database, that just sets up in memory this new post object. Then we want our controller to do one of two things. We want it to actually, we want it to save it to the database, and we're putting it in an if, because if you try to save something to the database and it is illegal for some reason, it's got invalid fields, or the database craps out and it breaks for some reason, it will return a false. And so by doing if post save, it's looking for a true or false response. And so if it responds with true, then we know that the post was successfully created. So what do we want to actually do? Well, so now it's time to render something to our user. And in this case, after you've kind of created a post, typically you'll just go to the actual show page for that post. So we're just going to go ahead and redirect to the show page for that post. So we can go ahead and use one of our route helpers, the post path, and we're redirecting to the post path, and we're redirecting, and we have to remember post path is expecting that ID, so we have to send in the post ID. But Rails also is smart enough to know if you send in a post object, I can find the ID for myself. And that's it. And so that will just redirect to the post. And then otherwise we could say, well, there's a number of things we can do. In this case, we're just going to say redirect us back to a new post. So it's just going to resend us back to the empty form. There's much better ways of handling this. You really want to send in some feedback to say why it didn't work, but we're not going to do that for now. So we've got our create action that's actually interacting with the database. It's creating a new post object in memory, then it's going to actually save it to the database, and then it's going to do something. So let's actually see how all that works and if we got most of this correct. So we've got our exceptionally ugly form. We're going to say our third post, and then la da dee da, and hit add, and voila, we actually we made our post. You can see it's made our 7th post here because of bad videos that I had to redo. And so then we're on the 3rd post, we hit back, and actually it's the form. So really within every post we almost want to go back to our index. That's pretty standard, but so let's just do that manually right here, and you can see the 3rd post does exist. So we will just cap off this video, but actually adding in a little note here to go back to all posts. So back to all posts, and we know that that's the posts path method right there. And then so if we go into things, so now we're in a post and we can go back to all of them.